And you found us. Hi, everyone. It's Emil. It's Emil Guillermo and his swoosh machine. All talk shows have to have a swoosh machine. Oh, and let me do this too. Welcome to show 728. We're going to talk about Suni Lee this morning. The Olympics, right? I mean, they won. The Americans won. I have to admit, in Tokyo, when Simone Biles had the twisties and she was out, I wasn't sure what was going to happen. America won the silver, got some individual gold, but for the most part, they were on the rebound. This go round, Simone Biles was back, and she leads them to a team gold. So once again, they're number one. And it was gratifying. It was kind of touching. It was around 10:30, 11 o'clock Pacific time. And you know that all the Asian Americans who were following Suni Lee, I mean, she was a star when she left Tokyo, and then she went to Auburn and was a NCAA champion there. And then I didn't know how sick she was, but she had a kidney issue, and it was touch and go whether or not she would come back. And so they said, no, she's back. And she had to come back to help out in this strong performance of the U.S. Gymnastics team. And it was great just to see them, see the five girls, the picture of diversity, as I said. And so congratulations to Suni Lee. Although, it's kind of like it doesn't become old hat. You get up there on the podium once and you get your glory the first time. It's harder 4 years later. You're older. Things have happened. You have injuries. So I guess this is a sweet moment. And also Simone Biles is back. But for some reason, it felt good, but I don't know. I maybe it's just because the first time around, I was as an Asian American specific kind of, a reporter or a journalist with an Asian American focus. I was so keyed in to what was Suni Lee doing and, her every move. And this year, maybe also because of the run for the presidency in the U.S., some split attention. But I had to say, when they awarded the team gold to the U.S., it did feel good. Not the kind of emotional feeling that obviously the team had, but I felt the kind of joy that you're supposed to feel when you watch the Olympics. So congratulations to Team USA. The gymnasts, the women's gymnastics team, victorious. And like I said, one of the things I do is I tend to get the recording and then I flip forward, right? But now I think maybe now it's less of Suni's team. She's in Tokyo without Simone Biles. It was more Suni's team, and now it's Simone Biles and the team. She's great though. She's great, except Suni got her on balance beam. Is it balance beam? Yeah, balance beam, and then floor exercises. Simone Biles did a little better, but it's just fascinating to see how your whole, all your practice, right? For all your 4 years of practice boils down to what you put out in that 1 minute on the floor, or 1 minute and a half on the parallel bars or on the beam, and any little wobble. And amazing how some of them got no penalties, but consistently got that 14-5, 14-3 score. It was great. U.S. won the gold, Italy the silver. Wasn't close. It was closer between silver and bronze between Italy and Brazil, but U.S. won with a 171.296 score to Italy's 165.494. And that, let's see, reading ahead here. Yeah, 3 years ago in Tokyo, the U.S. team won silver behind the Russian team. And it was the first time that the Americans didn't finish in first place since 2008 when they won the silver at the Beijing Games. And now here they are back atop the heap. Biles with Suni Lee. Jade Carey, Hesley Rivera, and Jordan Childs. Good team. Exciting watching the whole team competition this morning here on the West Coast. Suni Lee told the Times, "We had so many expectations on us this time, but I think we did exactly what we were supposed to. We went out there, we had fun with it. And I think that's the most important thing." And it is. You got to go out there and you got to have fun. If you forget that it's fun and you make it work, then, can you imagine on the beam? And all it takes is a little wobble. Suni Lee had a little tough time on the parallel bars. But it's fun to watch. And then if you try to compare it with stuff that you do in your life, like at your work, or doing a 5-minute set, trying not to wobble, trying not to show you're sweating, or doing an impromptu speech somewhere, or I don't know, whatever your job is, speaking before a panel that is judging you. And you think about the pressure on them, man. I mean, that's part of the fun, putting yourself in their gymnasts. What is it? Is it their onesie? And to see if you could perform on demand, 100%, no errors, no points off, no penalties. Man, the mental preparation. It's one of the few times that these games so far, it was a medal competition. Some of the games are not quite at that point where it means as much, but it was a reminder for me about why watching the Olympics is so enjoyable. And then you think, they're our team. They represent us, and then that makes it fun for all us viewers, wherever you're watching, on YouTube, on Peacock. I guess it's on E and USA. But the accessibility this time around, because of the technology to get the games and distribute the games to people, is so much better this time. It's actually pretty enjoyable. Yeah. Simone Biles told the Times, "I started off with therapy this morning, so that was super exciting," she said with a touch of sarcasm before referring to her therapist. "And then I told her I was feeling calm and ready, and that's kind of exactly what happened." It's got to be such a mind game. And of course, the whole thing started with after Jordan Childs, another teammate, fell, and you're wondering, how is this going to impact everyone? And Suni Lee said that she was nervous heading into her beam routine after she saw Jordan Childs fall. And then she said, "But once I got up there, I started to actually calm down because it just felt like, I don't know why, but I kind of took the pressure off myself." because I was like, you know what? This doesn't have to be perfect. You're just going up there and do what I normally do and remember to focus and breathe. And I think that's exactly what I did. I went up there and I could feel myself getting a little rattled. But once I calmed down, I did probably one of the best beam routines that I could have done. And, just hearing her say that to reporters after, how the moment, the cameras capture them right before they do the event. And I remember before Suni Lee took the beam, they had the close-up on her. And here she's saying, yeah, we know teammate Jordan Charles fell. But she says, well, once I got up there, I started to actually calm down. Because it just felt like, I don't know why, I kind of took the pressure off myself. And once again, if you think about the things that you do in your life, in your job, in your activities, how you can learn from that, how you can learn from an Olympian. The pressure's on. And they push through, and how they push through is significant. Suni Lee said, because I was like, you know what? This doesn't have to be perfect. We don't have to be perfect. We don't have to be perfect. Oh, the weight is lifted. I don't have to be perfect. Just going to go up there. Do what I normally do. Remember to focus and breathe. Oh, so important. You put the focus between that space in your eyebrows. And you don't forget to breathe. Because if you forget to breathe, you're like, no, you got to breathe. And Suni says, and I think that's exactly what I did. I went up there and I could feel myself getting a little rattled. But once I calmed down, I did probably one of the best beam routines I could have done. And isn't that the case? Relax, release, take control. You're the best. That's how it works. Congratulations to the gymnasts, U.S. Olympic team. They won. They won the gold. I guess the individual stuff is coming up, but this was the team event. But it's called a dominating gold medal performance, reclaiming their championship. Simone Biles, Suni Lee, Jordan Childs, Jade Carey, and Hesley Rivera. Really, the picture of diversity. And you have to be good to make the team. And this is a matter of diversity and meritocracy, meshing. I mean, no one's like pointing to any of the members of that team saying, you don't belong. You got there because your father's the coach, or you got there because someone likes you, or you got there because you paid someone. It was all blood, sweat, and tears, and excellence. That's meritocracy at work that produces that kind of diversity. A gold medal that looks like America, right? I mean, who can complain about that? A gold medal that looks like America. So I want to talk also about, once again, the Kamala Harris, the Duende Express, as I called it in my ALDEF column last week. I did another column on the ALDEF blog, aaldef.org/blog. And I say I titled it Harris's Diversity Coalition is the anti-MAGA mega force, because this is what she's done. She has brought together this coalition of all these disparate people, and it is confounding the Republicans. Now, If you thought the dismantling of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in higher ed in corporate America, you know it's happening. They're just like saying, oh, we're not part of this anymore. You know, if you thought that meant diversity as a value in America was dead, think again. Because Kamala, as she says, rhymes with Mamala. I like to see Donald Trump practice that without a teleprompter. Kamala, Mamala, Kamala, Mamala. Butter gutter, butter gutter. Kamala just woke America back up using skills we all learned from the pandemic. The Zoom call as a mass fundraising appeal is definitely alive and well. Now, Asian American Filipinos get their call today, Tuesday, July 30th, 5:30 p.m. Pacific time, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. Go to the my Aldef blog, and there's a link there, and you can register. I'm not promoting the event. I'm just saying I'm going there because a Latino friend sent me a link. I posted it so that people can see it because I don't know how many people got the word. But if you're curious, I'm checking it out as a reporter. And the call will have Filipino American politicians such as California Attorney General Rob Bonta speaking. And, you know, I think Rob Bonta, he's the next big Filipino thing. He's got the story. He's got the AG's office. He can springboard to any number of different positions. Some say governor next for him. And if you look at his long tail of a political career, it could mean something higher. But anyway, he's talking at this event. And if you're curious, I doubt you have to be Filipino to attend, nor do you have to contribute. But you can see for yourself if the buzz is for real. These are calls that are happening almost daily. Someone is calling for some kind of Zoom call. On Monday, it was the white dudes for Kamala. They had their call, drew 200,000 participants, and it included Jeff Bridges, who declared, I'm white, I'm a dude, and I'm for Harris. So there's a kind of excitement through the spectrum. The white dudes raised more than $4 million, which is slightly more than the 200,000 white women who had their call last week and raised $3.5 million. Another recent Zoom call included South Asian women, 10,000 attendees only. Well, there's more white women and white men. But they got 10,000 attendees. They raised $285,000. Latino women, there are 5,000 attendees. They raised $110,000. And, you know, the whole thing began the week before, after it was announced that Kamala was going to be at the top of the ticket, and then sorority-based black women, 90,000 attendees, $1.5 million. That was a lot. Followed by black men the next day, 232,000 attendees, 1.3 million raised. And all of this after a record haul after 1 week of more than $200 million. The grassroots is excited about Kamala Harris. How could that be? How could that be? Now, not so much for Trump and Vance. I mean, the big news with that campaign is it's spending a lot less now on criminal defense lawyers. But this Harris surge signals a revival of identity politics that's too often been tamped down by Trump's divisive MAGA beliefs. I mean, we're all being liberated by the force that is Harris. I mean, how many times you mention, hey, I'm Filipino, you make it sound like it's a throwback, right? Identity politics. Because so many people say, identity politics. I mean, they put it down. In fact, the response to all this Zoom fundraising by the GOP, there was a commentator on CNN, best he could muster was to say, it's the Democrat obsession with racial segregation. The Democratic obsession with racial segregation? So you take the truth and turn it on its head. The Democrat obsession with racial segregation. No, it's the Democrat obsession with inclusion. It's not segregation to bring disparate people together in coalition. These Zoom calls are celebrations of diversity. But, the GOP remains burdened by the same negative attitude that, is used to diss ethnic studies. In the past, they called it basket weaving. In the present day, critical race theory. It's a mindset that exposes how the MAGA GOP is incapable of thinking about an America that is all inclusive. Women, people of color, LGBTQIA, they can't do it. I mean, who's against trans? MAGA GOP. Who wants to divide people of color? Divide women? MAGA GOP. Who's against reproductive rights? MAGA GOP. Clearly, Trump didn't think he'd need much more than his MAGA white demographic. I mean, he ignored the rest of us, figuring that many voters were turned off by an aging Biden. Trump, I imagine, thought he was home free. Or maybe it was his lucky ear bandage that told him to pick as his VP someone who could simply be an ideological stand-in, a stand-in for MAGA. Unfortunately, J.D. Vance will be known for the duration of this campaign as the childless cat lady hater, because he is not going to shake that. With that one comment that was recycled from an old Tucker Carlson show on Fox News, Vance has alienated all women voters, roughly half the American population, not to mention the growing number of people under 40 who choose to be childless. Choose to be childless. It's America. It's a free country. And yet, J.D. Vance, for families, saying that if you're childless, you got to be taxed more. I mean, families with children, they get a tax break. They need more responsibility. They need to count more. They're doing more. You're childless. You're freeloaders. That's J.D. Vance's take. Name calling, right? And Trump really hasn't been much better these last few days. Ad hominem attacks on Harris, calling her dumb as a rock. She may be a lot of things, but she's not dumb as a rock. So here we have 100 days to go in the campaign. And Trump, Vance, and the GOP look like old-fashioned racists, sexists, misogynists, who want to take away all the rights and freedoms we fought for since the 19th century. Every last one. Just turn back. Go backwards. And every time you see Trump, tell me if this isn't true. Now that Trump has been cast as the oldest candidate ever to run for president, I mean, he looks older with each soundbite, don't you think? And then you got to think, and now Vance is a heartbeat away? Meanwhile, since Biden stepped aside, Kamala Harris has surprised everyone. I mean, she's a unifier. She's put together a youthful coalition that is the antidote to the Trump era. And what I mean by that is Trump lost, but he claimed the election was stolen from him. So it's like this cloud has hung over our democracy since January 6, 2021. And now what all this Zoom call fundraising has done, it's allowed Harris to unleash the value of diversity and a modern democracy that reflects it. I mean, here's something that happened just today before I came on. The guy who put together Project 2025, that blueprint, which is like a hit on America, the Heritage Foundation, he stepped down. He was under a lot of pressure. The Republicans don't know how to deal with it because a lot of that Project 2025 that calls for the end of the Department of Education and a number of things that calls for the end of government, essentially. When you cut out all the infrastructure and the bureaucracy of government, both good and bad, and you end up with a chaotic mess. Because that's the way the Republicans want their government. Ineffective. They want everyone to go to private concerns who will help them. Instead, I mean, everything's privatized. Public? Why go public? That's why education is like number one on the chopping block. Private schools for everyone, except what about the poor people? Oh yeah, they forgot. They forgot about regular people. That's Project 2025. And it's been used as a weapon by the Democrats on the Republicans. The Republicans can't take it. So they got to scapegoat someone. Probably it was under Trump's advice that they fire someone to say, hey, let's distance ourselves from this. Even though you can't. A lot of Trump administration people, future Trump administration people, if he wins, wrote the book, including Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro, one of whom is still in prison. One just got out during the convention. So this is the Republican view. Meanwhile, we're getting a glimpse of the Democratic view when you see the coalition, the diverse coalition that Kamala Harris puts together that reflects a modern democracy that should be the envy. We want that, right? That's the way things are supposed to work. It's not like the backward march of Trump and Vance to relive a racist past we've overcome. There's an excitement and enthusiasm for a new America. And of course, that's something I've predicted for a long time. Just following the demographic trends, I first noticed it in 1989, and it was in the late 90s, entering into the new millennium. I was part of a consortium of ethnic media organizations that chronicled the beginning of that new America. We started out in California, where minorities were already a majority, and I hosted and was the executive producer of NCM, New California Media. It was one of the first Meet the Press style panel programs on television that included top journalists in the ethnic media. Asian, Latino, Black, Indian, LGBTQ. We all covered diversity. And it's where I met journalists like the Oakland Post, Tom Berkeley, his daughter, Gail Berkeley. Now both have passed on. We also had reporters and commentators like the late Chauncey Bailey. Even Van Jones, long before he was with CNN, appeared on the program. And with a statewide focus, our roundtable featured editors from Los Angeles's La Opinion newspaper. And during my time as the host and producer, we covered politics. But you know, there never was one politician who could really excite and harness the energy of all the various communities at once. Governor Pete Wilson, remember him, the conservative? What's he doing there? I mean, he was like a watered down Reagan from San Diego. The recalled Gray Davis, the liberal who lost it. Was it Cruz Bustamante, who was a high-flying Latino leader who fell to earth? How about Arnold? Arnold. This was his rise. Those were the politicians of that time. And quite frankly, there was no one quite like Kamala Harris. Not back then, but there is now. The future we anticipated and hoped for nearly 25 years ago has finally arrived. And we can all feel the difference. Forget about policy. We'll get to policy once Harris puts out, platform statements. We can see what her maybe record would show from what was done during the Biden-Harris administration, what she did as California Attorney General, San Francisco DA. A lot of people like to say, oh, she's not so liberal. Here's the thing about Kamala Harris. She's not a super liberal. She is, however, a winner. And you may say, oh, come on. I saw Bill Maher. He said, she's not popular. She's not a winner. No, she's a winner. What? She went to Iowa, got her butt kicked, and she's a loser? Not if she ends up as vice president to Joe Biden, sidestepping all the other candidates, most notably Pete Buttigieg, Amy Klobuchar. You name them. Even Bernie Sanders, reluctantly has thrown his support to Kamala Harris. So there's something special going on. In the last 2 weeks, there's been a sense of unity that we have not seen in years. And Trump Vance, are they just weird? Or do they just not recognize diversity and the powers and virtues of diversity when it hits them in the face? Because that's what's happening. It's the Kamala Duende Express. And the chief value, the chief virtue is diversity, and it's bringing together these disparate people. The Republicans can't say anything except, it shows the Democrats' penchant for segregation. You get whites here, Latinos here, Asians here, Filipinos here, Latino. No, that's not segregation. That's called organization. It's like bringing these different groups together because they all end up in the same place, the same goal. And that's backing Kamala Harris. So my thoughts on diversity, the coalition, which is like an anti-MAGA mega force. And you got to admit, the Republicans are freaked out. They don't know what to do. The Republicans don't have a diversity strategy. What, throw out Tim Scott? The diversity strategy. Send out Vivek Ramaswamy? The diversity strategy. Hey, here's J.D. Vance and his Indian American wife, who's smarter than he is. Let's applaud that diversity. I'm telling you. J.D. Vance is not seasoned enough to take care of all the attacks that are coming his way. And he is not going to help Donald Trump because Donald Trump will spend most of his time wiping up after J.D. Vance. And supposedly, a vice president balances out, makes sure that, make sure that there's that there's a reason why that vice presidential pick is there. In Vance's case, it was to win the working class. There's nothing working class about J.D. Vance. He's full-fledged elitist, taking advantage of all his elitist bona fides, venture capitalists. I don't see how J.D. Vance is going to help Donald Trump. I honestly don't. But the thing about Kamala Harris is that she's brought together this diverse group that, and this is why the GOP doesn't know how to deal with diversity, because they're anti-diversity, because they're pro, what is a nice way to put it? They want to see the preservation of the white majority. And that white majority is everything to them. It's the reason why J.D. Vance has his cockamamie views on family values, on family, you're going to have the baby, you're not going to get an abortion, and let's hope it's white. So that means, hey, we want to protect the border. Of course, a lot of MAGA types have pointed to his South Asian wife, which is a contradiction, but that's J.D. Vance. He wants white babies. I guess he'll have half white babies. That's good enough. But he's anti-LGBTQ. And you see the response that the Republicans gave to the Olympic opening ceremonies that featured a couple of scenes with drag queens prominently on the boats on the Seine. That's the Republicans. They're not for diversity. They're not for a modern America. And it's become clear these last couple days. Anyway, that's my column on the ALDEF blog. Check it out, aaldef.org/blog. aaldef.org/blog. I mentioned Project 2025, the leader, the director of that. They don't know what to do. I mean, I'm sure Trump complained to the Heritage Foundation that, hey, here's this talking point that Democrats keep hammering us with. You got to do something. And they could do nothing except fire the guy who honchoed the thing. But that isn't like burning the document. Although the Trump-Vance folks seem to think it's like a clean slate and they can talk about Project 2025 again. No, they cannot. They just add another albatross to the neck of the Trump-Vance team. Project 2025 is going to stick with them to the very end. That was their vision, their view of America, and they got to own it. Just like Vance calling out these the ruling cat ladies. It's not even funny. Not even funny. All right, the whole idea about Joe Biden stepping aside, to put that into context, how in 1968, Lyndon Johnson stepped aside, and the reason was Vietnam was such a big deal, such a big issue. There were so many people who were against the war in Vietnam. Johnson saw it dividing the country, young, old, left, right, didn't know what to do, wanted to devote his time toward making it right, stepped aside, and the Democrats had that lousy convention in Chicago and ended up with Hubert Humphrey. So today I bring it up because it was reported, I saw it in the New York Times, that William L. Calley Jr., convicted in the My Lai massacre, is dead at 80. Hundreds of Vietnamese civilians died at the hands of American soldiers, but Lieutenant Calley was the only one found guilty. It was almost as if he was the stand-in and took the brunt of everything that American soldiers did in the villages in Vietnam. William L. Calley Jr. Here's the lead in the Times by Robert McFadden. William L. Calley Jr., who as a young Army lieutenant during the Vietnam War was the only American convicted in the murder of hundreds of unarmed, unresisting Vietnamese civilians in the atrocity known as the My Lai massacre, died on April 28th in Gainesville, Florida. He was 80. Oh, April 28th. Why, Emil, are we just hearing it now? Well, second graph, his death at a hospice was confirmed on Monday night by Social Security Administration records. The cause was not publicly disclosed. Family members did not immediately respond to requests for more information. Mr. Calley's death was first reported by the Washington Post. I mean, that's why it's important, because he is the only soldier who was ever convicted in the murder of hundreds of unarmed, unresisting Vietnamese civilians. Civilians, not soldiers, civilians. In a bona fide atrocity that history calls the My Lai massacre. If you know nothing else about Vietnam, know about the unfairness that was the My Lai massacre. More than 56 years after the killings of as many as 500 women, children, and older men by Americans who attacked with automatic weapons, grenades, and bayonets, raped girls and women, mutilated bodies, killed livestock, and burned the village, My Lai still reverberates as one of the worst outrages of a brutal and divisive war. 56 years. That's how long it's been. 500 women, children, older men, attacked by Americans with automatic weapons, grenades, and bayonets. They raped girls and women, mutilated bodies, killed livestock, burned the village. That was My Lai. It was the morning of March 16th, 1968. Second Lieutenant Calley, who should have known better. He was a platoon leader, but just 24 years old. Had been in Vietnam just 3 months. Led 100 men of Charlie Company in a My Lai 4, an inland hamlet about halfway up the east coast of South Vietnam. The Americans moved in under ambiguous orders, suggesting to some that anyone found in the hamlet, even women and children, might be Viet Cong enemies. You're a lieutenant colonel, right? Calley, 24, second lieutenant, 24-year-old platoon leader. You got 100 men. You don't know what you're doing, really. They met resistance But the Americans came in firing. Over the next few hours, horrors unfolded. Witnesses said victims were rousted from huts, headed into an irrigation ditch at the village center, and shot. This is Lieutenant Calley, and it's an important case because it took some time by an investigative journalist, Seymour Hersh, who later won a Pulitzer Prize for his disclosures for investigations on this story. According to this Time story, by then, Lieutenant Calley, a short, stocky man, scorned by his troops and fellow officers as an insecure leader who could hardly read a map or a compass and who seemed to lack common sense in the field, had been promoted to first lieutenant and awarded a Bronze Star with oak leaf cluster and a Purple Heart. On September 6, 1969, he was charged with the mass murder of civilians at My Lai. He was one of 25 people charged in the case, including 2 generals accused of misconduct. 6 were court-martialed, but all except Lieutenant Calley were acquitted. His story, that's the Calley story. It's hard to read, knowing what he did. The number of victims at My Lai never fixed precisely. The Army did not count the bodies. The official estimate was 347. But a Vietnamese memorial at the site lists 504 names, with ages ranging from 1 to 82. It wasn't until 1971 that Calley was convicted of the premeditated murder of not less than 22 Vietnamese and sentenced to life in prison. Governor Jimmy Carter of Georgia called it a blow to my troop morale. Governors in Utah, Indiana, and Mississippi denounced the verdict. Legislatures in Arkansas, Kansas, Texas, New Jersey, South Carolina asked for clemency. Governor George Wallace demanded a presidential pardon. Days after the sentencing, President Nixon spared the lieutenant from prison, allowing him to remain in his bachelor apartment at Fort Benning, pending appeals. In 1974, a federal judge in Georgia overturned the conviction, saying Mr. Calley had been denied a fair trial. He was released on bail, never returned to custody. In 1975, a federal appeals court in New Orleans reversed the judge's decision and reinstated the conviction. And in 1976, the U.S. Supreme Court refused to review the case, letting the conviction stand and closing the chapter. Boy, what a story, huh? I mean, he was up, he was down, he was down, he was up. The Supreme Court came in and said they wouldn't review the case. The conviction holds. Every now and then, it's good to review the history of My Lai, because that was the war. That really was the war. Is there any good part of the war? If you get it to that personal level, you see the war for all the terrible things that it represented and the way it pit these insecure, militaristic individuals who did carried out their orders in their mind. That was the patriotic thing. And what did it mean? It meant a massacre, an unethical, unlawful massacre, because some of these young soldiers were, like Lieutenant Calley, were unable to maintain a sense of decency and ethics as they carried out their orders in a time of war. It's a contradiction. These are warriors. But it's not fair to see how he carried out his orders that resulted in the deaths of innocent men, women, and children, unarmed, most of them, in these villages around My Lai. And you got to think, this is just one case. Just one case. Makes you wonder about what else we don't know about what happened in the jungles of South Vietnam. Read the stories in the New York Times and the Washington Post. The obituary of William L. Calley Jr., convicted in My Lai massacre but dead at age 80. He died in the spring, but it was just released recently after the Social Security Administration, after it responded to an inquiry on its records. Yeah, that was Lieutenant Calley. Well, see, we started off on a high note talking about the Olympics, but it's important to talk about My Lai. This is the importance of history. You know, there are people here in the Asian American community, the Vietnamese community. You know, they're the most Trumpy, the Vietnamese. They are the most conservative. I generalize because a lot of the first group to come over here were the soldiers. They were loyal to Nixon. They mostly stayed around Arlington, Virginia, outside of D.C. If you ever visit D.C. and go to Arlington, most of the Vietnamese restaurants there, when I was there, were owned by American loyalists. But now there have been younger generations, more recent generations coming over from Vietnam. And I don't know what they've been told or what they know, but surely it's more than what most Americans know, recall, remember about My Lai. My Lai to me is just, I hear it, I know it, I'll say, yeah, Calley, Lieutenant Calley, but the details are pretty staggering when you think about the details. The number of lives lost, more than 500. Officially, although there was never a body count. Never a body count. Anyway, I was reading from the Times, Robert McFadden's his obit. But check it out yourself. story first reported by the New York Times. All right, that's it for us. Hey, don't forget that I'm not plugging it now, but I know some Filipinos here are saying, hey, you talk about all these calls, the Zoom calls. Yeah, the Zoom call for Kamala Harris. Go to my Aldef blog, open up the file, my column, and you'll find a link, a bit.ly link that'll take you to the Filipino group that is hosting a Filipinos for Harris. Now, I'm just covering it as a reporter. I'm not going to go. I'm not going as a supporter. But I'm curious to see what it's like to see Filipinos there, to see if the buzz is real. If you're curious, you don't have to be Filipino. You don't have to contribute. Just check it out. I know a lot of Filipinos. I say the Vietnamese are the most Trumpy Asian Americans, but next to the Vietnamese, then come the Filipinos. And, as very Trumpy Asians, and some are very reluctant to support Kamala Harris. So if you're one of those, you should check it out. Go to my Aldef blog, aaldef.org/blog. Go to my column, the latest one where I talk about Harris today. Open it up, go to the link today, Tuesday, July 30th, 5:30 p.m. Pacific, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time tonight. Register. You got to register before and then check it out. All right, that's it for our show today. Thank you for watching, listening. You can catch us on YouTube at Emil Amok1, on Twitter. We're on Twitter, X, at Emil Amok, FB.com, Facebook at EmilGuillermo.media, also at Emil Guillermo. And you can find us on YouTube at Emil Guillermo, at Emil Amok1, at Emil Amok, EMILAMOK1. We like to close out with a little meditation. I'm sure Suni Lee meditated when she needed to just relax and release. And meditation can be as elaborate as you want. You can have your eyes open, eyes closed, stand up, sit down. You could do anything as long as you are aware of where you are and you just stop, hold, pay attention to your breath. Breathe in and breathe out. Breathe in and breathe out. Relax, release. And by relaxing and releasing, you take the reins. You go slower. You step aside. You let go. You'll feel better. You'll make a better choice. I like to throw in a little loving kindness, where you send love out to others, knowing that as you send it out, it comes back twofold, fourfold, threefold, all the folds you want. That's just the way it is. And so, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo here. Catch us again next time. Go vegan. Do your thing for climate change. Don't go EV, go VEGAN. Till next time, Emil Guillermo here. Emil Amok to you.